scallywags. Welcome to Under the Crossbones. My name is Nick Hoffman. You've reached episode 209. I hope you're doing great today. I'm feeling pretty good. I've been having some knee trouble recently, but it's starting to shape up a little bit, which is making me happy. And so that's a plus. I've also had a nice time doing this show, so that's a plus. I just can't find anything I'm going to complain about. Let's talk first about the number 209. I was thinking I wasn't going to find anything to go with the number 209. And then it hit me in the middle of the night. I was thinking about it, and the number came to me. I said, I know I've heard that in a movie, and here it is. If you're a RoboCop fan, the great big gun-toting machine that he fought, the monster-looking one, that was the enforcement droid? Anyway, it was Ed 209. Ed 209. If you don't remember it, play you a quick clip. Just what the hell? No one's listening? I'm kidding. You're listening. And so here's a reminder of Ed 209.
Please put down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kenny.
You now have 15 seconds to comply.
See, you kind of do remember, don't you? Exactly. And that's what hit me in the middle of the night. I thought that was Ed 209. That was the number.
I'm sure it's only a glitch.
So I lucked out. I didn't have to read you a poem. I didn't have to come up with some silly thing. I've got Ed 209. That's what we're talking about, 209. Anyway, I've said that enough times now. What else can I tell you about? Well, I know that a big announcement came out from the folks that run the Long Beach Pirate Invasion, and that is that they have a new date this year. Instead of the end of June, which it was last year, and I think had been hovering around that date for previous years, this year, because of circumstances beyond their control, they've moved it to May 30th and 31st. So if you're making plans for your pirate festivities, make sure you leave room for the Long Beach Pirate Invasion, May 30th and 31st. It's always a good time. It's run by good people, and there's lots to do. There's lots to see. It's right there on the water. There's it's interesting. It's a great layout, the way they've got it laid out the past couple years, and it's lovely. So make sure you make room for that. What else can I tell you? I have been feeling especially piratey lately. I've been feeling like, I don't know, there's something, you know what, there's something about it. Here's the thing. For me, this pirate stuff, and I've said it in an interview with Phil when I first was interviewed on this program a while back, episode something. But I feel like what pirates has come to symbolize for a lot of us that do this stuff is it's an independent spirit. It's an independent spirit combined with the desire to have fellowship with your crew, whoever that may be. In my case, it's my family. And I feel like, together we can take all comers. We can handle what comes up in front of us, and we can knock it down, or learn to deal with it. But as a crew, we're unstoppable. And so that independent spirit, though, is that this world keeps changing the rules on us, it feels like, or maybe we become more and more aware of how the world works, and we find that the way things stand in the way of maybe the way we want things to be is frustrating. And so we look at the example of pirates as somebody whose path in front of them had been changed in a lot of cases. They had been going down a certain path thinking, hey, I found a way to make a living. And then boom, it changes, and they thought, why don't I keep doing this? There's issues. Look, I know there's issues. But for me, it's about, hey, make the world the one you want and rely on your crew to get you there. And that's what we've been doing. So I've been trying to get these out on Tuesdays. And you know how Barbosa talks about that the rules are more just guidelines, Yeah, that's what it's been. So that's why a couple of these have come out on Wednesday. I also found out that we're not streaming on the station there that had been previously been a sponsor. So here's the thing: the good news is we don't have any sponsors. So I don't have anybody to please. I am my own pirate. So if you want to still help us, you can still click on those buttons for Amazon. I think Phil gets a little bit of money from that. And we'll just keep doing this to do this because I enjoy it. So let's talk about our interview today. Now, Mike Tunez, who is the founder of Firelock Games, he has partners and guys that and ladies that help him run that company. But I think Mike Tunez started it all. Firelock Games puts out a few things: Blood and Plunder, Oak and Iron, Scurvy Dice, and they just put out a new rule book, Blood and Valor. If you're a gamer and you do tabletop war games and things like that, perhaps you have already heard of it. If you've listened to this show before and you listened to the previous interview with Mike, perhaps you have already heard it. But if you've never heard of any of this, let me start here. Mike puts out a good product, and if you search out Firelock Games, you're going to find some cool piratey stuff, and that's kind of what we do here. So without further ado, I want to turn you to our interview. This is episode 209, and I give you my interview with Mike Tunez. Mike Tunez, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here again.
Hey, Nicholas, happy to be here.
Yeah, so Firelock Games, I've been looking over your material. I looked back at episode 47 where you had spoken to Phil, but how many years has that been?
Man, I think that's been like, I want to say 4 years now, maybe even more.
and how old is your kid?
So my youngest son is going to be 4 this September. Yeah, that's right, because I think he hadn't been born, I think, at the time of the interview, right?
I don't think so. I was just looking at to familiarize myself, I was looking at your web page, and I saw the pictures of your beautiful kid, and
thank you.
yeah, and one of the things, and this probably isn't. Well, this is a fine place to start. So I have two lovely kids myself who have found the love for pirates, probably because I forced it upon them. But now my daughter likes to draw pictures, not just for me, but on her own, of pirates and whatever. Well, I think one of the great things about this love of pirates is it's fun for the kids, and so it ends up being something we can share with our kids. I bet you feel similar with your gaming.
Oh yeah, definitely. So my little one has he's taken an interest. I've got lots of ship models and stuff like that all around the house, so he's always trying to take my rigged and painted ship models into the bathtub with him, which I'm not allowed him to do yet, but no, yeah, it's definitely I've definitely been thinking about we actually have a new game called Scurvy Dice that I think is more up to speed for his he's a little young for it still, but I want to play that with him soon. I'll probably one of the first games he plays. So get him into the piratey gaming type stuff right from the jump.
That's great. And I can, when I looked at some of the pieces that you guys have specifically associated with Blood and Plunder, because the scale's bigger.
Right.
I thought, holy moly, even if I never played the game at all, which I'll be honest, I haven't. I will eventually be sending you guys money for all sorts of things.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so let's now, for folks who have listened to the show and heard they have some backstory, but let's back up for folks who've maybe never heard that episode and talk a little bit about what Firelock Games is.
So, Firelock Games, we started out basically as a vessel to deliver the Blood and Plunder game. And what we do primarily is we do all kinds of tabletop gaming. So tabletop games, just think about, for those who aren't familiar, Risk would be the closest thing, kind of, sort of, maybe. Although the Risk is definitely a tabletop game. Like basically any kind of board game or game you play with people in person, not on the internet. So we start out with Blood and Plunder, which is a miniature war game. And what that is that's kind of like the most popular one you may have heard of that's similar is Warhammer. So if you've heard of
Uh-huh.
Warhammer, it's basically little figurines and toy soldiers, and you set up kind of scenery similar to like a model railroad setup, right? And you use that to play a kind of tactical game, so kind of like a strategy game.
Sure.
You know, you move the soldiers and little troops on the table can move a certain distance. You typically measure in inches, use a measuring tape, something like that. You roll dice to resolve combat and different things like that. So that's the kind of games we primarily make. Right now, we've got Blood and Plunder, which was our original game. And we've also got, and that one focuses more on the troops themselves, so pirates and colonial conflicts and stuff like that, with 156 scale, 20, which we call 28 millimeter in gaming figures, and that has ships and everything else. And then now we've got more recently we've added a game called Oak and Iron, which uses 1/600 scale ships, and that's more focused on fleet battles and a whole bunch of ships on the table. It's also a little bit of a simpler game. We've put together pre-packaged, so that if you don't have any experience wargaming, you don't have to worry about building scenery or getting the specific tools or painting or anything like that. It kind of is just ready to play out of the box, but still gives you that same experience. And then we've also got Scurvy Dice, which I mentioned earlier, which is like a dice. It's kind of like more of a typical board game. You're rolling dice to build a ship, and then you're racing. This one's a little more fantasy oriented, where others are historical. So you're rolling dice to try to build your ship and race for treasure and stuff like that. We've also been expanding into some other things. Like we've got a World War I game called Blood and Valor that's come out recently, but that is probably outside the scope of this podcast. But I figured I'd mention it anyway.
No, that's great.
Yeah. So and we got more stuff coming, but that's what we are. So we're a company that makes games, and we tend to stick more toward historical sides of things, as opposed to the more Hollywood fantastical element. Though we definitely have room for that as well.
Excellent. And I watched one of the videos on the. Do you have a headphone on?
I do. Yes.
Oh, okay, because I was hearing me, which I'm not sure why I'm hearing me. Oh. Anyway, not that I don't sound good. I love hearing me. Anyway, I was watching the unboxing for Oak and Iron, right. And boy, they were thrilled, which leads me to believe that you guys, because you're gamers yourselves, you really are gamers developing for gamers in a big way.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
I'm glad
great.
That comes across.
Yeah, no, it does, and they seem so happy about it, which was fun to watch. Mm-hmm. Tell me about, given that you've gone historical, tell me about your connection to Benderson Little.
Yeah, so Benderson Little. So Benderson Little, when I read his book, The Sea Rover's Practice, many years ago, that's what really helped totally just destroy some of my preconceived notions of pirates and what they were. Because I've read lots of, if you're into the history, like I'm sure lots of your listeners are, you read books that kind of give you a general overview of the world that the pirates are in, the kind of things that they're dealing with day to day, but you still kind of keep that more Hollywood sort of picture of the individual pirate, right? And what's so cool about his books is that he really breaks it down and gets you into that really practical perspective of the individual and of the crew itself, and how they operated, how they fought, which from a wargaming perspective, how they fought tactically and how they operated and stuff is super interesting. So his book is super unique in that regard, which got me, when I was first working on Blood and Plunder, I referenced his stuff a lot, and then my partner, Alex Aguilar, said, why don't we reach out to him, see maybe he'll help us out with some consulting. We could run everything by him. And he just did that. He sent him, we messaged him on Facebook, and we got a hold of him, and we've been working closely together ever since. Our game would not have the quality and the attention to detail that it had if not for his incredible input. So that's
I love that. I had, when I had created a pirate exhibit, I too had found his work very, very inspiring, and had reached out for, information and tips, and he was so, like you found, very accessible and very helpful. Yes. And for the listeners that haven't listened to any interviews with Benderson, because I think Phil did a couple of them, and I'm planning on one in the near future. Benderson is just a great writer, a great historian, and I think if you haven't been exposed to him, go ahead and take a look. You'll be pleased.
Definitely. Can't recommend his work enough, and he's a great guy.
He is a great guy. That's the other. And he also had I mean, he has grown kids, but he also had some little ones just recently, which, of course, is keeping him extra busy, which is fun. Now, when you first started developing the games, as I listened to the interview, I found that, you were using other previously designed materials to use as your pieces and whatnot. But now you guys have all of your own line of little ships and pieces, correct?
Yeah, and we've expanded it quite a bit since then. Since that first conversation, we've had. So I think that was right into the run up of our first Kickstarter. Either it was active or just about to start. I don't really remember. Let's see. We did an initial set, which I think we did some French models, some Spanish, some English, and since then we've added Dutch, we've added Native Americans, we've added some Africans, some more generic kind of European guys, a whole bunch of different stuff. So
That's
it's
exciting.
and we've got quite the line of ships now. Let me see. So of our larger 156 scale ships, we've got our biggest one. We have a galleon. We have a galleon. We have a 6-rate frigate. We have a flute. We have a light frigate. We have let's see. We have a brigantine, a sloop. We have a tartana. We have barks, piraguas, canoes, longboats. And I think that's pretty much it. Might be missing some others, but that's for the most part our range. So we cover quite a bit of ships, and we've got more coming still. So
now, if folks haven't seen them before and they're quite stunning, what does one of these ships, maybe an average one, set somebody back?
An average one, if you're getting into the game, is probably right around $50, give or take. Where on the larger end, the galleon, which is a pretty massive model that we have to cast specially, would cost you about $299.
And how big is that?
So that galleon's it's about 2 feet long.
Wow.
More or less. It's it's a pretty substantial model. Yeah, it's pretty nice. It looks especially impressive when you have its deck filled with crews and you're pushing around on the table. And we've played some, we go to gaming conventions and we'll put a galleon and some 6-rate frigates, and we'll have big kind of sea battles and have we'll have a galleon and a frigate and a couple other ships defending the galleon, and then a bunch of small pirate ships attacking them and them trying to defend it. And we've had some pretty fun games, and it looks pretty incredible when it's all on the table and you're playing through it and you're going through all that. It's this whole kind of war game thing is just such a pretty. It just creates these beautiful scenes that you can get involved with. It's just super fun.
Right. Well, I mean, certainly one of the things that draws many folks to the pirates, not just to games, but to the topic as a whole, is the spectacle of it all. The look and the texture. Yeah. And you guys, the things I've seen on your website are so beautiful. I can understand why it's taken hold with folks' imagination.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely, we can't put ships down on the table without drawing a crowd. So it's definitely makes its impression for sure.
Now, how's business?
Business is good, thankfully. I can't complain too much about business. We are continuing to expand and grow and just create new things and getting new players every day, and old players who a lot of times with these games, since there is especially on the Blood and Plunder side, there's a big hobby aspect involved, right? So you got to get the models and paint them, and construct the rigging on the ships. The hulls themselves are put together, but the rigging's got to be built and the ship's painted. So, and a lot of people build their own scenery and stuff like that. So you can buy the game, and in some cases it takes a while to get it onto the table, ready to play in all its grandeur. So some people who bought it early on are now getting into it, a bit delayed, backed up by other projects and such.
Sure.
But it's continued. But once people do, have responded really well to it, and we continue to grow. I think we have a pretty bright future ahead of us.
Fantastic. Now, taking my background is I'm a part-time teacher, but I'm also a part-time stand-up comic.
Cool.
And obviously you hope that the stuff that you really, really have a fun time with, you get to do more of. Do you also have a day gig that you have to do, or is your gaming company taking care of you?
No, this is my full-time gig. Me and
Fantastic.
A couple other people here. Yes, it's taking care of us. It's now there's some financial sacrifices involved in that. It's not the best paying job, but helps me to focus on it and help. I'm not the type of person who could just kind of do something part-time. If
Yeah.
I had a day job, I'd probably end up getting fired because I wouldn't do my job well because I'd be focused on this. So
That's good.
I have to make it work. So it's either this or nothing. So
That's funny. Related story, but kind of funny. My one of my nephews was over here for the Super Bowl, and we were talking. And when he was a little kid, he worked at a public pool. Now, when I say little kid, I mean he was like 5th grade, and I guess they had kids helping out in the snack bar or whatever. And when he got behind the counter for his first shift, he said he was there for maybe an hour, and then he noticed that from the snack bar you could rent flippers, to wear in the pool.
right.
And so for for whatever reason, he thought, "Oh, I want to try those out." And so he went out to the pool with his flippers, and he spent hours swimming with his flippers. And when he came back, they said, "You were supposed to come back here and sell stuff, right?" And he said, "Oh, I was just having such a good time with the flippers." And they said, "Well, that's okay. Just so you know, tomorrow you'll have to pay to get in, and we won't need you to come back here anymore." So I can understand. You get caught up in the thing you really love, and sometimes it doesn't work for the man. So.
It sounds about right. Yeah.
That's great. So now the first game you had was Blood and Plunder, right?
Right.
And are between Blood and I'll get it.
All right. Thought that was off.
That's all right. Between Blood and Plunder and then Oak and Iron, how much development time was there between the two?
Between Blood and Plunder and Oak and Iron?
Yeah.
So, how much time did it take me to develop each, or how much between the two games?
You came out with Blood and Plunder first, right?
Right. Yeah. So Blood and Plunder came out first. Then we started creating a major expansion for Blood and Plunder, which we got a little carried away on. That was that ended up taking a whole lot of time, and we almost got into some trouble with that one. But we got it out. We got it through. Finished it up. But that one took about a year. So a year after Blood and Plunder, we had that going. So it took maybe a little more than a year, probably closer to 2 years, I guess. Because we kind of started it when Blood and Plunder came out. Blood and Plunder came out, and then we kind of started focusing on the business aspect of it. Okay, so it's out. We made it through Kickstarter. We have the product. Now let's start selling it, right? So putting it in stores, distribution, all that stuff. So that was that took up most of our time. I think the first year, basically just learning how to operate as a business with the product that we had. Sure. And then from there, we started developing things slowly. Then that led us to the other expansion. So all in all, that was probably about 2 years. Then from there, once that other one was done, we started working on Oak and Iron. And Oak and Iron was much faster. I had a lot more experience. I'd been through a lot of the gaming, through the design process. I knew what I wanted to do, what I didn't want. I knew the kind of thing I was going for. So I was a lot more focused on that one. And I think the majority of the rules design was done in about 9 months.
Wow.
And then, it took much longer than that because we ventured. So all Blood and Plunder is all made in-house, right? So we cast our own metal miniatures, and the ships are made of resin, and we do all that casting here. So we make that game ourselves. We don't do the printed materials like the books and cards; those we order, but the rest of it is made here. Whereas Oak and Iron is all made in a factory overseas because we're doing injection molded plastics and a little bit more of stuff that's. You don't have to really build them or paint them, right? So that's the idea. Uh-huh. You can paint them; they're set up for it, but they come in brown for the hull, white for the sails. But so learning that whole process and going back and forth with the Chinese manufacturers and stuff was a whole new learning experience. So that took, you learn that you have to really stay on top of them to get things going.
Right.
So that took some time developing it, the back and forth, correcting production issues and all kinds of stuff like that. It was a whole new thing to learn, but that probably took almost as long, if not longer, than actually developing the game, the rules for the game. So, and now that's coming out the door. We're refocusing on Blood and Plunder again, and we're moving it into the latter end of the golden age of piracy with a Kickstarter this year, where we're going to release some plastic models, which has been a popular request because basically our figurines are little pewter single piece casts for the most part. Uh-huh. So what we're going to do now instead is like a more traditional model kit where they're coming on a plastic sprue and you cut out all the little parts and build the model. Now that's a little more work, but the good thing about that is that they're a lot more customizable. So there's different options for like heads and arms and weapons and things like that. So you can make each one a lot more individual. So you can kind of custom tailor each model to your own liking. So
Interesting.
yeah, and then we're going to be moving that into the what most people would consider the golden age. The latter end of the right after the Spanish War of Succession, and all the pirates of Nassau, all the famous guys from the general history of pirates like Blackbeard and Charles Vane and Jack Rackham and all those.
Sure. So from like the very end of the 1600s to just the beginning of the 1700s, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So to about 1730, more or less.
So your previous pieces had focused on earlier, like Buccaneers?
Yeah, so our Blood and Plunder focused on basically about 1630 to 1680, more or less. Then we kind of bumped that up. I mean, really it covered the whole thing, but yeah, since it's the whole thing that makes Blood and Plunder unique among war games is that it's an amphibious game. So it's the same rules to play a game on land as it is to play on the sea. The seas just add, the sea just adds the rules for the ships themselves. But
Gotcha.
but your guys can get off the ship and go ashore, and vice versa. You can bombard a fortress with your ship, and do a lot of stuff. So a lot of stuff is part of the game. So those types of things really geared themselves more toward the buccaneering age. Whereas, the later pirates, they didn't really raid ashore all very often. I can't find any real examples of it anyway.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so, and really they were really more just kind of, they were more just thieves and such. They did have their battles and stuff here and there where they got captured. They didn't win very often when they actually got into a real fight. But it's still interesting. They're still cool. They have lots of interesting options, and they'll be a little more fun to play in the game. They'll have like most pirates ended up getting not most, but many pirates ended up getting in trouble when they were a little drunk. So there's a chance they'll start out a game with your guys inebriated, and you'll have some effects based off that. So it'll be a little more of a fun faction to play. But as far as that, so if you're not trying to be super serious and competitive, they're a great choice because whereas the Buccaneers, as you know, they were more of a military force, So even though they were putting armies together and sacking towns and fighting in formations and stuff. They were pretty interesting group for that kind of thing.
When you were designing for Oak and Iron when you're designing for the next part of Blood and Thunder with the more the tail end pirates there, so you've had to fine tune some of the battle characteristics, yes?
Yeah. So, and that was that was one of the things that was a little more work to figure out because we also tried to make everything unique, right? So a French Buccaneer and an English Buccaneer are different units in the game, and they'll have slightly different characteristics. And so the way they fought and the different commanders that you could take will give you different options. Like, for example, since if you take Henry Morgan as your commander, Henry Morgan, when he attacked Panama, he got all his Buccaneers to form up firing blocks and move in formation and basically act like an army. So that's reflected in the rules. Whereas if you take somebody like Lolonais, he's more of a kind of he operates more on intimidation and terror and stuff like that. So you get those things where his guys kind of try to intimidate your opposing force. So there's different ways how all the different aspects of what happened historically affect how you play your armies, and it adds some interesting flavor and makes it really different each time you play based on what you take.
When you get Blood and Plunder, your first purchase would probably be the rule book and a starter kit? Is that?
Yeah, more or less. So this is one of the things that we're doing with this big Kickstarter we're doing this year, is we're trying to make it an easier buy-in. So what we're doing is we're putting together a 2-player starter set that's themed around Blackbeard's last battle with Maynard. So you get a couple of sloops, a couple small crews, because that was a really small fight, and the rule book and the cards and the dice and all the things you'll need to get started. But for now, especially if you were interested in jumping in on the buccaneering side of things, the typical way a player would get started is you'd buy a rule book, which is available on our website as a hardcover, which is a really nice hardcover, or we have a PDF available also from a website called Wargame Vault. You buy the rule book, you can kind of look at, see what you want based off what's in the book, because you have choices. You could buy one of the different army starter boxes. If you're going to be playing with a friend, you probably want to get 2. We also have a 2-player option on our website, and that just lets you pick 2 really basic forces, just enough to get them going, the feeling of the game. So you get the rule book and the cards and the models. So that's one of the things about this type of a game is that it's not like you don't get it all in a box, which is something we're gonna make that an option, but you don't have to go with that option. There's different ways you can get into it. You can get the book, and you can get the Dutch and the French, or the Spanish and the English, or whatever you want to mix it up with.
Yeah, well, that's got to be a fun aspect for. I know going out into the pirate community and you see folks in their garb, and if you start to talk to them, they're going to pull towards one period. They're going to pull towards a particular group of pirates. They're going to pull towards a particular aspect of history. So this allows gamers to really do the same sort of thing with their gaming.
Yep, exactly. And from up to the finest detail, up to the colors you paint them, and the way you set up your ship, to the flags you put on it, all that kind of stuff.
That's pretty remarkable. That's great. And you've gotten great response from folks, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, thankfully.
Yeah. So you have a new Kickstarter campaign coming out, right? Or is it already in process?
Yeah. So it should be coming out in the spring this year. We're still gearing up the final components for it and trying to get all of our ducks in a row so we can present it properly. But that's the starter set I just talked about. So that's going to be the core of it, right? And that starter set's going to feature plastic models all in a box, because the biggest thing preventing us from selling a kind of all-in-one starter kit right now is doing it in resin and metal, right? Since those materials are a little expensive, they're a little heavy, so it makes it not practical to do an affordable kind of 2-player set. So we're going to move to plastics for that, and we're going to have some plastic ships and some plastic miniatures. That'll be, it brings the cost down a little bit, and then it's a lot lighter. You can put it all in a box because the ship will come in pieces. You got to build with the plastic kit, so it makes it all smaller. So we don't got to try to put like a couple of giant 10-inch resin ships inside that box. So it'll be a little more accessible. So that's the goal of that Kickstarter, is to make Blood and Plunder a little bit more of an accessible game, and also create some options for plastic for people who prefer that. Well, we will continue to support our metal and resin that we have currently. The plastic will just be a cool alternative and add some new models and some new options.
And a different price point.
Yeah.
That's great. Open it up to a whole new fans that maybe aren't as committed but will become so after that. That's great.
Right, exactly.
Excellent. Mike, if people want to track down information on your company, your website is, can you give us the URL?
Sure. The URL is Firelock, as in like a flintlock, FIRELOCK, firelockgames.com. You can also find us on Facebook. We're very active on Facebook. We always engage with our player base on there. We have a couple groups, or 3 groups. We have Blood and Plunder, Buccaneering on the Spanish Main. We've got the Oak and Iron Gamer Group, and we have the Blood and Valor Gamer Group as well. So those are the 3 places, and Blood and Valor is being our World War I miniature game that we're coming out with any day now. I'm actually just waiting for the book to show up.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
Mike, this has been a great chat. I'm so glad that we could reintroduce people to you. And I hope that now on both your website and the Facebook, you'll let folks know when that Kickstarter's up and running, yes?
Definitely. And on our website, you can sign up for a mailing list. We do also update on Facebook pretty regularly. So both of those are good ways to keep in touch and know what's going on with Firelock Games.
That sounds great, Mike. Hey, thanks for taking some time.
No problem, Nick. Thanks so much for having me.
And that was my interview with Mike Tunez. I hope you enjoyed that. I sure enjoyed talking to him. He sounds like a good guy. If you look at the picture that goes along with this episode, he looks like a good guy. He looks like a lot of fun, doesn't he? Anyway, go and get yourself some of his product. Those things they look made well. They look super, super piratey. I don't play tabletop war games the type that he does, but I would play with his with his toys. I would play with the pieces that they have produced. They are beautiful. I don't think I can paint them super well like I see some people have painted them. Boy, but I would give it a try because they look really, really cool. So track yourself down some of Firelock Games products. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll enjoy them quite a bit.
I'm sure it's only a glitch.
That's our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like hanging out with me a little bit. I'm sure happy that you come to hear this show and to listen to the interviews. Remember, folks, the real treasure in life is family, friends, fun, and laughter. And I want you to go out and get yourself some. Please take care of those that you love. Be nice to everybody you can. And it should make for smoother sailing. I'm Nick Hoffman. This is Under the Crossbones. See you next time.